What's going on? This is Ryan with Automatic Comics, and up next, we're going to be going over a few different topics that I saw pop up on Reddit, things that I thought would be helpful for new and seasoned collectors. We're going to be covering a few different topics, including should I get this comic graded? That's one that I see a lot, all the way up to why are some comic collectors such jerks? Let's check these out. All right, so before we get started, please remember to hit that like button and hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more content like this. So, like I said, I've talked about this on some other videos as well. I follow the comic book collecting subreddit, and there are often different posts or topics that I think are interesting that would be good to talk about. So, for this video, I thought I would consolidate a number of them into one video because it was all topics that I felt were kind of like comic collecting tips that would maybe be useful for new collectors, but I think there's also some useful information in here for seasoned collectors. So first things first, this is the comic book collecting subreddit. I do recommend following it. I think there is some useful information in there, but kind of going to my comment about why some comic collectors are jerks, there are definitely some jerks in this forum. There are some people that are just angry about everything, it seems. And so just be prepared for that. If you're posting in this forum, if you post certain things, it'll get people angry. You can largely just ignore the people that get angry at you. But there were a few different posts about grading. And so I thought I would start with that. And so we had this one pop up and it was grade or no. And it's this X-Men number 14. And so grading or not is a little bit of a tricky question because it's hard to say just for sure, yes, you should do it or no, you shouldn't. There are a few different things to take into account. The first one is just asking yourself, why do you want to get it graded? I mean, for some things, I like having graded comics for presentation purposes. I do like them for presentation purposes, but I've said this in other videos. Can't lie to ourselves here. The primary reason that you are getting a comic book graded is for resale. Now, it might not be resale right now. It could be resale in the future to help you sell the book in the future or help your kids or your spouse or whatever sell the book in the future. But resale is definitely one of those big things. And so you do have to consider that. Now, when we look at this X-Men number 14, X-Men 14 is a pretty valuable book. There is a good argument generally to get this book graded. And this copy actually looks pretty nice. I mean, if we just take a general look at it, I mean, just off the bat here, I would think this book looks like an 8.0 plus from the front cover. Now, I mean, it's hard to say with flat, front on pictures where you can't see things from an angle. You might not be able to see certain creases, but then we see, like right down here, it looks like there's maybe a tape pull. There's a tape pull down here. I've had books as high as, I believe, a 7.5 with tape pulls. So maybe it gets a 7.5, but there's a couple of them down there. So, I mean, just off that, I would say, this book, I mean, it's a nice looking copy, but that tape pull is going to be, I think, the big limiter on it. I don't remember if this guy provides a back shot. Okay, so there's a back cover. I mean, back cover, nothing really jumps out. I would say this book, if it didn't have the tape pull, I wouldn't be shocked if it got like I said, like an 8.0. I mean, there's definitely some spine wear, that kind of thing, maybe even an 8.5. But with that tape pull, I would say this book is going to get probably a 7.0. Maybe it gets a 7.5. And so if we go and look at X-Men number 14, and we just kind of check out values on this book for a 7.0 to a 7.5. And so we say, okay, so a 7.0 to a 7.5 down here, last sale on the 7.0, $484. Pretty cheap. I mean, definitely a book that's been coming down. But if you look again, prior to the comic boom, 2019, around a $425 book. I mean, this seems like it's almost fully corrected at that last sale, 484. But it seems like with the other sales, it's probably reality sitting more around 600, especially when you look at, a 6.5 selling for 747, which seems high, a 7.5 selling for 825, and this 5.5 selling for 475. Maybe somebody just got a killer deal on the 7.0 at 484. But let's say this book is like 600, maybe $625. So if you're going to get it graded, you've got to look at what your input costs are. And so if you spent $600 on the book and you're going to then spend another, you've got to get it pressed and cleaned generally first, even though it's over the $400 limit for the for that CGC base level submission. I think you probably still submitted as part of that. And so it's going to cost you, I can't remember, it's like $35 to get that book graded, plus the pressing and cleaning. Maybe your input costs are like $55 to get the book graded. So that's what you have to think about. It's like you could sell it maybe for 600. It's going to cost you another 55 to get it graded. You've got selling costs of about maybe 15%, which at 600 is like $90. So 90 plus 55 is 145 minus 600, let's just say, and you're at $455. If you're at 455, you get it graded, you're kind of like break even price. If you are below that, you have a profit margin there. And if you're above that, you're probably losing money getting it graded. And you might want to consider, can I sell this raw? If that's your goal, obviously, if your goal is to sell it, can I sell this raw for more than what I paid for it? You know, do I need to get it graded to actually move the book? That's just the type of thing you need to consider. And so if this person had bought this book for 300, yeah, I'd probably get it graded. If they bought it for 450, I probably wouldn't. If I was going to try to sell it, I'd probably try to sell it for like 550 or 575 or something under the graded price, but still a, you know, where you have some margin on the book after selling fees. That's just my take on this book. Then we've got this one here. This one is, I feel like, is a little bit easier on whether you want to grade these or not. We've got some early Amazing Spider-Man books here. An Amazing Spider-Man 39, 41, and then this Avengers number 11. And now they did not provide enough pictures here to grade these books, but you can tell just looking at them that these are lower grade. Like this one right here. Let's take a look. It's missing a piece here. You can tell the spine is rough. There's pieces missing from the spine. I mean, this book might be like a 2.0. 2.0, maybe it's a 2.5. And we don't know if the back covers. I mean, it could be a 0.5, could be incomplete, could be back cover missing. This one, pretty big crease, some tears on the side. This one looks, you know, maybe another big crease here. This one might be more like a 3.0 type book. Then we look at this one. This one looks rough. It looks like probably tape all along the spine from the discoloration there. I mean, who knows? It might be a split spine. Again, this one might be like a 2.0 type book. And so if we just real quickly go and check out pricing for these, and we go Amazing Spider-Man number 39, and we look at the pricing on what I think I said, like a 2.0 to a 2.5. And a 2.0 to a 2.5 for this book, 167 last sale for a 2.0, but that was like a year ago. More recently, 2.5, 114, 3.0, 103. This is the type of book I would not get graded. I would not get that book graded because you could probably it's still a desirable book. You could probably sell it for like $75, maybe $80. And your grading costs are going to take up more than that to get to this 100 to 115. So that's what I would look at. It's like, what would it cost for me to get that book graded? If you're going to do pressing, all of that. And like I said, maybe like $55 at this price point, that's like half your value. There's no way I would get this book graded, the 39. Then if we take a look at the 41, so the 41 is that first Rhino. So if we take a look at this book here that I said, you know, maybe it's like a 3.0, something in that range. If we go down to a 3.0 for this book, 247, 2.5, 192, this one maybe, you know, if you got this book for free, I can't remember if they say where these came from. Yeah, they don't. They just say they're new to it and they have no idea. So maybe they just came across these, you know, maybe they got these from a relative or something like that. And so if you have no input costs to it, it's still a very desirable book. So you could probably sell it raw for like $200. Is it worth it to spend that extra 50 or 55 to get it graded? Maybe. Might make it a little bit easier, but I think it's still kind of a wash. And so, yeah, you might sell it a little quicker. You're going to have a little upfront cost. I'd say this one's kind of a coin flip. Maybe you get it graded, maybe you don't. This is for the 41 here. Now for that Avengers number 11, I can tell right now. I don't even have to look, but that one is not worth getting graded. So we've got Avengers number 11, and I think that's like second Kang, something like that. And so if we go down to where I feel like this is like a 1.5 or lower, and so you can see, I mean, February, we had a 3.0 for 139. this, I mean, maybe it's a 2.0, but you can see a 2.5, 182. 2.0 is probably like $150. I think you'd be lucky to get a 2.0 on the way that book looked. It could be lower. And so again, that's very similar to that 39. I think you're going to eat up like 50% or so of the value of the book trying to get it graded. And I think it would just do a lot better raw, just not bothering with the wasted time and effort getting it graded. Now, there are other reasons, like I said, for getting books graded. If you want it for presentation or whatever, that's one thing. But with a book like this, you might as well just sell it and then buy a graded book. If you want it graded, just buy one that's already graded. You could probably get that for a very similar price to what you could sell it for raw. Then next one here. I thought this one was just interesting because this is an example of where you could trick someone that isn't overly familiar with comics. Maybe they're relatively new to it. And this person goes, at first glance, I know what it looks like. It is not. I assure you, what it truly is what I need help with. The reason I have not included it until now is because someone altered what it was to look like something it's not. With that said, I'm hesitant to even include it in a collection. Any advice or guidance when it comes to these kinds of things would be very much appreciated. So it looks like an Amazing Spider-Man #1, but I can tell immediately that this is a Golden Record reprint, or it's almost certainly a Golden Record reprint with someone having added these features to it. I'm assuming this is a Golden Record reprint. I mean, I know it's a fake regardless, or not a fake, but a reprint. And so they added the price here, and they added the issue number, because if the Golden Record reprint is missing those things. So if we say we go to Amazing Spider-Man #1. So we go to Amazing Spider-Man #1, and actually we could just go right down to the reprint, but we'll just show this, this curator pedigree copy. I mean, it just sold, so you can see what a 9.8 of this book looks like. You can see, 9.8, you've got the little the number right here, you got the price, all that kind of stuff. And then if we go down to the Golden Record reprint, which is this one, and let's take a look at a 9.8 of that book. Let's see if we've got an image here. So we got a 9.8 of this book. Okay. Oh, here we go. All right. And so you can see it's missing the price. It's missing that little IND. You can see the little IND here. It's missing the 1 March. It does have that MC though. It has, the Comics Code Authority, that kind of thing. So someone just tried to, I mean, it might, who knows? I can't imagine that this was intention. The intention here is to fool someone because it's so obviously a fake, but maybe it would, who knows? Maybe it would fool someone, and they, you post a blurry picture and someone tries to trick someone into paying a full value for this book. But just something, to be aware of, that there are reprints of books out there. There are people that will try to rip you off. And this person's just asking what to do about it. I mean, I think it's fine. I don't think it's any big deal. Maybe you get it graded, and so then it's notated on the label and all that kind of stuff, clearly what it is. So you're not worried about it ever confusing someone. But yeah, I mean, maybe just keep it as a reader book so you can, flip through it. But yeah, that's this one. I just thought this was interesting because it's an example of where someone's trying to maybe trick people with with a reprint as the original. Now this was kind of similar. This is something I wanted to talk about a bit because I've seen people post about these types of situations before, where this person has this, Amazing Spider-Man 365. I think it's the first cameo of Spider-Man 2099, something like that. And, they say, I bought these at a comic shop. The guy let me buy 12 of them. So I bought them. I think it was 1992. They went to bags into a box and sat there until now. They have never been touched or opened aside from the picture I took a few minutes ago. Probably frame one of them, give one away. So I have 10 left. Friend is telling me they're worth quite a bit of money. I don't collect anymore. So I'd like to unload them. If it's worth it, probably frame one and put it on the wall. Thoughts? So just my comment on this is that I also collected like that when I was a kid, where I would go into the store, I would buy whatever book I was going to buy. And outside of a couple few rare ones, I would read Ghost Rider, but just about everything else, I just threw straight into a bag and a board and threw it into a short box and never touched it again, other than maybe just to take it out and look inside the bag and board. And I didn't look at them again really until 5 years ago. And at that point, I was like, I was starting to get a little more familiar with grading, and I started looking at them. And I mean, I realized after going through just about all those books that almost none of mine were 9.8 candidates. So I think people think that if they just bought these books and put them straight in bags and boards off the shelf, that they're immediately high grade, high dollar books. And when you're talking about books from this era, like the 90s, late 80s, the 90s, there are so many of these books out there. And your books may not be and are likely not 9.8s unless you were actually at that time looking closely at them when you were pulling them off the shelf. It was very likely they had a couple little spine ticks, maybe from folding over something or whatever. So just something to think about, that if you have a situation like this, you do need some, and you're not really familiar with grading, you probably should get somebody that has an eye for it and have them look at your books, and you should pay them for their time. I just say, like, don't ask people to do this stuff for free. Like, I mean, that's just one of those things. Like, this takes people's time. It takes people's expertise. That's one thing I'll say. Like, I've noticed, like, in comic book collecting, like, a little too much cheapness in this hobby, even with people that spend tons and tons of money. There's a lot of cheapness, and I brought that up when I'm talking about like pricing services, which we're going to touch on a little bit, like Go Collect, Cover Price, GPA. Just like, people will spend thousands of dollars on a comic and not spend $11 for GPA to help them price it out. It's wild. Like, it's wild that kind of stuff happens, but it's very, very common. And so don't cheap out. If you think you have something that's of value, you should, pay somebody for their time to help you out. But the other thing you could do is you could do like a 9.8 pre-screen, send them all in, but you might lose a bunch, not a bunch. It's like $80 or whatever that they would lose if they were all 9.6s. But you could do a 9.8 pre-screen if you're not familiar with grading, and then CGC will basically prevent you from spending all that extra money on grading books that are maybe 9.4s and 9.2s that don't have a lot of value. If you're not familiar with the 9.8 pre-screen, what it means is you can select a minimum grade that you want the book, the set of books that you're sending in, to receive. And if they are that grade or above, they will grade it. If they're below that grade, they won't. They charge you a fee. So even if they don't grade it, it's like $8 or $9. But it does prevent you from spending the 20, 30, 50, because you can do it in any tier, dollars that you would have spent to get the book graded if it's not really financially worth it. But just something I wanted to comment on there. Now, jumping to the apps, we had this person here where they say, what app do you use to database your collection? So I'll kind of branch into a couple things with that. So the first thing is pricing apps or pricing tools. And I mentioned the three kind of like primary ones that are out there right now. You've got GPA. That's this one right here that I was using earlier, GP analysis, so just short as GPA. You've got Go Collect, and then you have Cover Price. Those are the three big tools that are out there right now for pricing comics. I pay for GPA and I pay for Go Collect. They are very valuable tools for me. They are well worth it. I think GPA costs me like, I don't know, $12 a month or something. And I think Go Collect still only cost me like $5 or $6 because I've had it for so long. And I highly recommend them, even if you're spending like $100 on a comic, because if you overpay by $20 on a $100 comic, you could have had that basically covered in your cost for GPA or Go Collect or Cover Price. So just something to think about. It's like, don't go cheap on the wrong things. And I think a lot of people go cheap on the wrong things. Now, related to that, what app do you use to database your collection? Cover Price is probably, of those three, not probably, Cover Price is the best one for databasing your collection. The other two aren't really for that. You can, in a way, use them for that, but Cover Price has a much better tool for actually cataloging your collection. Now, it links in with CLZ, I believe. I think CLZ uses the Cover Price data. So CLZ is another one that you can definitely use. Now, there are others out there. I know a lot of people recommend. We could actually go in through here, and you can see the top one here, CLZ Collectors app I've paired with Cover Price. So there you go. So the top comment on this post is what I was saying. But I know there are other ones out there, because some people don't like paying for things. Like I was saying, people are cheap. That is one thing I remember in this post. So many people were like, oh, but I don't want to pay. I don't want to pay. And it's just like, if you want a quality product, like, and you've got thousands of dollars in comics, like so many people have thousands of comics and their collections are worth tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they refuse to spend just a little bit of money on something like this. And the reason a tool like Cover Price in the CLZ can be really valuable is that it will automatically update the prices for you. It takes care of that. It's giving you accurate pricing data for what you have. And so that's why that's the one I really like. But there are these others, these kind of like free ones that you've got here. League of Comic Geeks is one. This person recommended CLZ as well. Then League of Comic Geeks keeps getting mentioned. We've got Microsoft Excel. That's what I use. I use Microsoft Excel for my business side of things. That's just what I use to track. You've got Comic Book Realm, CLZ again, Excel, Comic Book Realm. So, I mean, I really do think if like you want a pay for app that's going to keep your prices updated on the fly, the CLZ Cover Price combo is probably the best option out there for you. That's just my take on that one. All right. Jumping back to grading again, just this one, because real quickly, I'll tell you the answer to this one is no. This is, do I bother grading this? This is an X-Men number 2. Half the front page is torn, and that's being generous. It is like 2/3 of this front page here is missing. This is guaranteed a 0.5. And that's one of those things where it's good to understand grading. Like, this is a 0.5. Everybody knows this is a 0.5. That's all this is ever going to get. And it's never going to get better than a 0.5. You can't press it and get a better grade. You can't clean it and get a better grade. As long as you check and know that it's complete, it is what it is. And so if you went to a GPA, and I know it really bothers people sometimes when I price raw books with GPA, but the reality is, especially when you're talking about books like this, you can price with GPA. And if you're watching any type of heritage sale, Instagram sale, Facebook, all that kind of thing, raw books are generally selling very similar price, or Comic Cons, generally selling very similar prices to graded. It's just that those prices have come together, and it's because a lot of people are fairly good at grading at this point. And in this perfect example, we all know this is a 0.5. I mean, that is what it is. And so you go down, you look at a 0.5. I mean, last sale 333. Now, I would say this 0.5 that sold for 333 probably had a much better looking cover. We can't see the picture, but here's one sold for 238 on Hakes. I mean, like, this is a 0.5 where, yeah, it's beat up, but this book looks infinitely better than this one. And so you do have to take, when you're talking about low grades, that is a big thing you have to take into consideration, is that visual appeal of the book. And so, I mean, that book in that type of condition, like missing most of the cover. Let's see if there's a coverless copy. I don't see a coverless graded here, but I mean, even like the worst case on here is like 250. I still think that book would probably sell for like 150. Maybe 125 to 150. I mean, I think it's going to go quite a bit lower than any of these other 0.5s, just because it is just missing so much of that cover. That really does hurt it, but it still has some value. I think 125 to 150 bucks is about what this would sell for. I would not bother grading that comic book. All right, so now on to the next one here. So I thought this was an interesting one. So I'm new to comic book collecting, and I'm sure I'm not the first to ask this. So I have been to a few cons recently, and one of my friends is a big vintage comics collector. I've wanted to start getting into it myself, but the whole world seems pretty overwhelming to know which comics are worth going after and which aren't. I'm not saying I'm solely in it just to buy comics for resale purpose, but I also don't want to get taken advantage of. So I was wondering if anyone out there has any pointers for me so I don't waste my time on bad comics, don't go get completely hoodwinked into overpaying for some. Thanks in advance. All right. Jumping back to pricing services. Like that is the biggest thing there, at least to avoid getting, caught overpaying. Now, tied to that, you do also have to know how to grade. If you're buying graded books, that's one thing. You can get a pricing service, you can get a good idea what that book is worth in that grade, and you never really will overpay. Like you can, I mean, there's little things like it could be like color strike and whatever else that could matter a little bit, but you're generally not going to overpay. You're going to be armed with that information. If you are getting into raw books, if you're trying to buy raw books, you have to know how to grade. I mean, especially if you're getting into higher dollar raw books. Like once you're getting above, and I'm not saying $100 is like high dollar. I mean, for some people it is, but once you're getting above like $100 for a raw, and I'm a person, I've spent as much as 10 grand on a raw. I think that's the most I've ever spent on a raw. So if you're buying raw books and you're spending a lot of money on them, you need to know how to grade and you need to be confident because people will screw you. No, I mean, I am not like whether they intentionally are screwing you or they are poorly informed and that's causing you to end up holding the bag at the end. That happens all the time. I have bought from all kinds of places and I've had plenty of issues with grading. I've had plenty of issues with books that I've received, whether it's overgraded, restoration, color touch, glue. I don't know if I've had anything married. Well, yeah, I mean that collection I bought, I had married stuff, but yeah. So married books where you've had pieces from different books combined. I've had missing pieces, missing pages. Like I remember there's one guy on Instagram, man, I refuse to buy from him now. He sold me a book and he's like, oh, it's a lower grade. It was missing 8 pages, like 8 pages when I got it. And he did not disclose that. All he said was it's lower grade. It's like, yeah, no, that's the lowest grade. It's a 0.5. And so I refuse to buy from that person now. Like that person clearly does not check their books. And so there are a lot of people out there that are either lazy or are out there to screw you or just are not informed well. And so if you are buying raw books, you need to know how to grade. And I cannot stress that enough. And it takes time. It takes time to learn it. It takes time to do it well. And you got to see a lot of books. And so, yeah, that's one of those things. It's, I would say, pricing app and learn how to grade. And, not buying books that are not good books to hold long term, like in terms of like financial side of things. If you start familiarizing yourself with auctions like Heritage, Comic Link, Comic Connect, look at the types of books that show up a lot. The books that show up a lot are generally going to be the ones that are a little more popular, the books that are less likely to maybe cause you some problems down the line. Now, obviously, there are rare books that have a lot of value, and that's a little bit different. But generally, if you see books selling regularly, seeing them selling often, it's relatively safe to purchase that book. Then add that in with understanding pricing and understanding grading and all of that. But that would be my big pieces of advice there. Watch auctions, learn what's out there and what regularly sells, get a pricing tool, and learn how to grade. That's what you really need to do. All right. Now this one is about the jerks in the hobby. So I was scrolling through Reddit and I saw this post and I was just like, I know what the comments are in this post before even going into it. And so it's this person posted this, this Black Cat #1 that they got, this J. Scott Campbell. I don't remember if it's a variant or if it's the cover A, but they said this grail just came in. If you want to trigger a bunch of angry collectors, call something a grail that they don't think is a grail. I mean, it's just like you start going down into the comments. First one, top comment. And I'm not sure what grail means anymore, I guess. And so it's just like, there's just all these types of comments in here where then some people will they try to change it to personal grail, which I think they think is being nice, but personally, you're still crapping on that person's purchase. Like, why do people feel the need to do this? Like, this clearly was a big, important book for this person. Why can't people just say, congratulations, awesome book? But they can't. They cannot help themselves. There are so many people out there that just feel this. I mean, look how many upvotes this has. 92 upvotes for this sub. That's quite a bit. 92 upvotes for basically insulting this person's purchase. I mean, come on, guys. Like, this is where I'm just saying, how about we be nice to each other in this hobby about people's purchases, about being excited about what they get. That's how you get more people into the hobby. That's how you don't push people out of the hobby and then go, "Oh, I can't believe that nobody's buying comics anymore." The whole there's that meme with the guy who jams the stick in his own bicycle wheel. Like that's what this feels like to me, where it's comic book collectors calling, newer collectors or people that are excited about books, like calling them out and saying it's garbage or whatever, and then wondering why people leave the hobby. Like, let's just stop that. All right. That's my take on this one. Let's just stop that. And if you don't like it, if it's not a grail to you, just don't say anything. How hard is this? you know, but hey, this is my take on it, right? Like but I knew, and that's the problem. Like I knew that's what that was going to be because it's so common, especially on subs like this. And on Facebook, it's just as bad. And so just try to be nice to people. Now, I will say, I'm kind of calling myself out on this one a little bit. I consider my channel like a big part of it, the financial side of comics. I mean, I am a comic dealer. I buy and sell comics. I talk a lot about pricing and I call out high sales, low sales, surprising sales, that kind of thing. So whenever I'm calling out a high sale, because I've done it, a couple times and I've posted them on Instagram, that kind of thing. And I am not trying to make someone feel bad about the purchase. I am calling out something that looks like a big outlier for what I am used to. And so what I am saying in those cases is, given market conditions, that kind of thing, that sale is surprising to me. I probably would not have paid that price for that book. I think that the downside risk is high. And that's one of the things I'm often considering there. It's like, I don't have a problem with anybody buying whatever they want. I am looking at it from upside to downside risk. That is a big part of what I'm doing. And it's because this is a business for me. That is what I have to do. That's how I have to approach this. And so that's what I'm looking at. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about those purchases. It is not ragging on anybody for their purchase, that kind of thing. I think everybody should be happy. I know I've overpaid for things. Like, it is what it is. It's not ragging on anybody about that kind of stuff, but it's just me identifying if I think there's an upside or downside risk to that book. I'll give an example. This was a book that I posted about on Instagram recently. This is on Comic Connect. This is a Detective Comics number 8 and a 1.8. And you go like, hey man, it's like, this is a Detective Comics number 8. Like you can never overpay for that book. And so this sold for $17,260. Like, I mean, you go like, hey, I don't know. Like if you're not familiar with it, you don't have any idea. Is that a good price? Is that a bad price? But again, if you look at history, and which you can always do, and history does not fully define values. I get it, all that stuff. But if we look at a Detective Comics number 8, and they don't sell all that often, it's not like there's a ton of these out there, but we see a 1.5 sold in August of 2022 for $2,700. A 3.0 sold in June of 2022 for $5,399. I think those are the last two like recent-ish sales. Like other than that, I mean, we had I doubt this is actually this 1.0. I doubt that's a Detective Comics number 8. This $26. There's no way. That's some incorrect link. I can guarantee it. But otherwise, we've had 2019, 2018. I mean, we had this 8.0 in 2019 for $16,155. This one, 1.8, went for $17,260. Now, this 15% buyer's premium has already been added. This is the final price with that added. Usually, if you're watching this auction live, you have to wait like 2 or 3 minutes and it automatically adds it in. This is well after this ended, so it has already been added. But that's why that one, I go like, man, like that is a crazy high price. And it is. But if you have people that have enough money and they literally don't care, their time is more important to them than the cost. And so they go, it's been almost 2 years since a copy of this book has even sold. I am sick of waiting. I want this book. And so you had two people that probably felt that way. There were a couple people that were sick of waiting to get a copy of this book. And so they're bidding against each other. And, that's when you end up with these huge record prices. Now, can that be replicated in another auction? Who knows? Maybe not. And so you have to be prepared for that. And that's what I'm talking about with downside risk and what I'm commenting on, is because I'm assuming this is going to get pulled in eventually. The Comic Connect sales take like a month, I think, to get pulled in. It'll get pulled in, and then anybody that owns one of these is going to try to immediately ask more for it. Like that's what happens. But if one comes up for auction again, now that one person has the book, it might have been only one other person bidding against them that was willing to pay that kind of money. And maybe they get the next 2.0 that comes up for sale for $4,000, $5,000, $6,000. Now you're 1.8. You're technically like, you're kind of down like $10,000 to $12,000. That is a very real possibility with this book. And so that's what I am commenting on. I'm not saying, like, I'm not insulting someone for their pickup or anything like that, but I think the downside risk on this book, on this purchase, is extremely high given pricing history. That's all I'm commenting on. All right, last one here. This one is just kind of like a comment again on, to me, it's like the value of grading, especially with people that are newer to comics. And so this person says, someone take me back down to earth here. I bought both of these from a shop for 50% off sticker price. They look to be first editions. Am I crazy, or did I strike gold here? And you've got this Ultimate Fallout 4, and I think their sticker was $12 and $14. So he got them for $6 and $7 a piece. Now, if you are not familiar with this book, you might think that this is a first print. I think there's probably something in the serial number, but the big giveaway on this one is the Marvel stamp here. So in the reprint, which this is, the Marvel is surrounded by red. And so if we go and look at Ultimate Fallout 4, just so we can see a real example of that book that isn't the reprint. Now, I will say, I remember when that reprint came out, somebody submitted one to CGC and got the reprint graded as the original, which embarrassing for CGC. So, yeah, because you should be able to catch that kind of stuff. But let's look at, I think this may be a Heritage. Yeah. So you can see here, this is a first print. This is the actual first print. You can see the big difference here. This Marvel just has black behind it. When we look at this one here, it has the red behind it. This is the reprint. Now, like I said, there may be something, it looks like maybe the serial number is a little different too. So if we look at this one versus this one, so this says 00111. This one says 00411. Let's see if the number on the bottom is different too. This says 596062020. This one says 596060764. So the serial number is also different. This one does not say direct edition. I think the price is the same, $399. Yeah, so the original says direct edition, the reprint doesn't. So there are little things down in the barcode area as well that will give it away. But the big one is the red behind Marvel. Now, I have a big problem with Marvel putting out reprints like this. If it is a reprint, it should say reprint on the cover. Like it should say it. I mean, just put it in like down in here. Like it put a little like reprint, like where direct edition said was on there, put reprint. Like make it obvious. I mean, because otherwise you have people that are going to try to rip others off like this. Because there are some reprints out there that are almost impossible to tell the difference until you open up the book. And this is one of them. I mean, this is way too close to the original. And this is a case where buying a graded copy outside of that one that I mentioned where CGC graded the reprint as the original, but buy the graded copy and that will save you, from making those types of mistakes. Now, yeah, you might not find that super deal. Like if this person had actually bought two first prints for $6 and $7, they would have, gotten a huge score there. But still, this type of thing, I mean, you have to be very aware when you're buying raw books, and you need to really be on your stuff. You need to know what you're doing, know what you're looking at, or you can have people take advantage of you, and then you lose money. Then you get disheartened with the hobby. You leave the hobby, all that kind of stuff. But those are all the different areas that I wanted to talk about for this video. Hopefully you found this video useful. you know, maybe a little bit entertaining as well. I mean, that Grail post, oh my God, just stop being jerks. like we want more people in the hobby. You want more people to be, you know, in comics, all that kind of thing. Like, stop being jerks to each other. But if you like to see more videos like this, you enjoyed this video, I got more videos over here. I've got the subscription button right here, and I will see you in the next video.